This quick before the phone overheats. Go to Odysee, BitChute, Coffee if you want the other videos. So this 48-page Comicsgate crowdfunded model, or your first crowdfund. First of all, you're never going to get a second chance to make a first impression, but people will forgive mistakes if you try to make it right, because we're not filthy SJWs. And right off the bat, if your art isn't ready, then keep practicing until it is. Yes, 48 pages is plenty. Do not try to do more than that. For some reason, the printing process is an 8-page thing, so you're kind of at 48 pages, 40, something around that. It's hard enough just to get that 48 pages out there with decent quality and on time. So I was going to use this Preacher comic I have as the model, because it's the kind of a very well done package, and it's exactly 48 pages. And though now if you read it, it kind of feels dated from 1998, but it's good. It's good for what it is. And the writing is very good, while the art is simple. Where if you compare it to some Comicsgate's offerings like Cyberfrog or Lone Star, the art is great, but the writing is sort of a miss in Cyberfrog. It's better in Lone Star, but I think with Ethan it's an ego thing, and with Mike he just didn't want to pay anyone. They're okay writers, but it doesn't match the art. Just get a writer, to Chuck Dixon, JDA, someone involved in Comicsgate. Someone who's got some skin in the game. A lot of people have forgotten the Comicsgate model, which is build a channel first, even if it's something very simple. People want to get to know you, to know that you're not actually a crazy person, or even if you are, at least that you'll give them what they paid for, and not too late. I would have said on time, but that appears to be very difficult for a lot of people. Though Tim Lim and Doug Ernst, I believe, have a record for on-time products. And don't do a channel like this one. Keep the politics out of it, but I'm not selling anything. And you want to think about the basic economics of it. What is your break-even point for the product? If you total the numbers up and it comes out to be $23,000 before you go from red to black ink, then that's what you need. You got to beat that, or it's a no-go, unless you're willing to go into the hole and assume that you're going to continue to build. And you got to have the money to do that, and assume that you're going to continue to build the channel, build a following, and you got to have a lot of faith in your product, like Clint Stoker did with Downcast. He knew that he had something that was worth doing it on very thin margins, because it was a good product. So look at your social media following and your email list of interested customers. Is it anywhere close to the break-even point? If it's not, then spend time building your channel first. Social media is your advertising campaign, and it's free. And in the first year, it's going to be like almost 100% of the effort. You don't need to actually spend time talking about your future comic or showing art drawing streams, because talking about good stories turns out to be very, very boring. Maybe show a little bit every now and then that you're working on this, but you don't want to show too much. People are not into that either. Talk about whatever you're interested in. Whatever that you are interested in or you don't like, music, pop culture, or movies. Just get people to know that you're not going to pull a Red Rooster on them, or worse, a Detective Dead, or Stealing Solo, which I'll explain in a minute. Don't jump down my throat. Or Sovereign, which I think is still late. So I remember people coming out of the woodwork with zero social media footprint, and that they're going on channels shilling, hey, give me $40,000 for a 100-page story. Nobody thought to perhaps ask a few questions like, what's your financial situation? What's your experience in selling comics? If you're living month to month and you're trying to publish a 132-page comic, that's a tremendous amount of work. That doesn't add up unless you have some financial resources and a history of publishing comics. That's why I'm pushing that 48-page model. That's hard enough just to get that out there. You got to be in a good enough financial situation where if you have to buy a new computer or update your network or get external hard drives, or an artist falls through on you and suddenly you're down $6,000, you got to be able to cover that. And just, wait until you are, or go work for somebody else instead of starting your own campaign. Let me compare Soul Finder by Douglas Ernst and Downcast by Clint Stoker, and they're all on, I don't know, their second and third copies by now. Those were two very good, simple beginner's books. They were good, but you knew that they were a first-time offering, which they still took a tremendous amount of work. And I don't remember how many pages Downcast was. I think it was more than 48 pages, but he pulled it off. I think Soul Finder was a little bit shorter, but they're both excellent. They got the books in your hands. That is a huge difference between a rough but decent finished product versus getting Stealing Solo shipped without any shipping. They just they mailed it like a catalog or something like that. So that's not good. Or not getting, even worse is not getting anything at all. Because at least with Stealing Solo, it's like, yeah, the guy did complete the product. He had some first time issues with the campaign, but he did send you something. Because Critias apparently took your $50 and just put it up his nose. And if I can be honest, it's also a case of caveat emptor. Because Critias, did he seem competent to you when he was selling, when he was on live streams? Like, did anyone look into him at all, like while he's on a live stream, maybe ask a few questions, like, so who are you, like, do you work at Target, how much money do you have, like, if you run into issues? It's like, these are personal questions, but you're also asking for money from people, so they're entitled to ask those personal questions. And artistically, I do want to say he knew what he was doing. He was I looked at the art on his campaign. He published several pages of it. He was an artist, but he wasn't a businessman. He should have published. He should have worked for someone else at first, for a few years to get that experience, and maybe then go on and do his own thing. And if you think I'm being a little bit of a dick, which I edited out a lot of stuff on the fly, keep in mind he took $40,000 and never delivered a product. Will that change in the future? I hope so. And with stuff like that, like on that or Red Rooster, even if you get the product late, the buyer is so pissed off they don't want it anymore. Comics, you're not buying a Ford pickup truck for $27,000 where it doesn't matter if the salesman's an idiot, because you're buying the product. At least the Brightwisers screwed over the Comicsgate buyers, but they made a lot of money from Walmart, and maybe morally Mitch is sort of a low person, but from a business viewpoint, it's a gamble. It may have been worth it. Probably was worth it for him. I mean, it's not something that, like, I could even conceive of, like, screwing over a buyer like that. That just strikes me as, are you insane? Are you actually a crazy person? And now that I think about it, it seemed like there were a fair amount of leeches and ticks that hung around Comicsgate. They never flew the flag. And that's now, I think Malin mentioned that a long time ago. He was pushing for people to come out and say, yes, you're Comicsgate or you're not. And at the time, I didn't think it was important, but it turns out I think he was right about that. And a lot of that was on Ethan. He had a show where he was pushing them. He was using them to get super chats and grow his channel, and they were using him for distribution. And now he claims that he owns Comicsgate Live, which is also a bit of a sketchy issue. Because he came on board after Comicsgate was firmly established. But I think he's claiming he owns Comicsgate Live, that phrase for live streams. And he and Preston can spend money on the legal battle over who gets to use Comicsgate Live name. And from 30,000 feet, my assessment is neither side is going to be granted exclusive rights to that, with the ability to exclude others from using it. But they're going to spend like $12,000 on having their attorneys write the cease and desist letters back and forth, and early stage procedure, before they realize that they wasted $12,000 starting a legal procedure that, if you look at the end goal, it's like, oh, this is going to cost you, it's going to be 4 years and $412,000 to finish it, and it will win you the prize that is worth, under the totality of the circumstances, much, much less than the money you spent on it. If it's worth anything at all, I'm not sure it is. Ethan could drop the Comicsgate Live name tomorrow, and he could call his channel Cyberfrog Comics or Cyberfrog Streams, and he'd probably be better off. All caps, no offense, is kind of a silly name. I just mean that you already have name recognition. I'm not the biggest fan of the Cyberfrog universe, but I know Salamandroid, Heather Swain, some of those characters, and those all have better name recognition, and also cooler name recognition. Like, you could call it Heather Swain Comics, or you can have a cute girl, her as the icon with the boobs hanging out kind of thing, which would probably be better than the Laughing Man logo he has now, which I don't like for some reason. Though, to be fair, it's not worth anything to Preston either. Just continue to openly and notoriously do business under that name, and leave each other alone. Believe it or not, as 40-year-old adults, you don't actually have to fight like your 16-year-old emo girls. The other thing to consider is your stuff does not have to be perfect. I'm not trying to imply that you have to be perfect. It does have to arrive, and it does have to be minimally competent. But minimally competent is also connected to an informed buyer. If you're upfront about the simple art style of something like Stealing Solo, and the customer still wants it, then that is also fine. And I'm not really ragging on Stealing Solos. I'll explain. I know people who are fans of people's channels just go nuts. There's also a calculus on the buyer-seller relationship. Jeff Hicks, who is the guy in pink, is a nice guy. That matters. And Stealing Solo is sort of for a specific community. So it's a combination of, you got free entertainment from Jeff for a couple of years. The comic probably won't suck. If you just want to give him a little ego boost as a thank you for the entertainment, it's like, if people look at it as, oh, I listened to this guy for a year. I never super chatted, never gave him anything on Patreon, never did any of that. He's doing a comic. It's a little ego boost, a thank you. Here's $40 for a year's worth of entertainment. That's a very valid reason for buying a comic. Or getting in a fight with SJW. It's like, oh, you support Mike Miller to own the SJWs? Yeah. Well, that's not a valid reason. Any reason for me giving you money is a valid reason, is what it comes down to. The business relation, and a lot of people support Ethan because SJWs hate him. That is A-okay in my book. Absolutely support that. They hate him with an incandescence that is really bizarre. Anyway, they hate him more than Myers. And I thought they hated Myers, but no, holy shit, they hate Ethan like you wouldn't believe. Okay, my point is, business relationship isn't all business. Every time I've heard Jeff on a live stream, he comes across as a genuinely nice guy. He had problems with the shipping on the first thing, but he worked to fix it. He didn't sour the relationship with the buyer. To be fair, I can say this now, I'm 12 minutes in. His girlfriend did, but he can't really control her because she seems like an actual crazy person. I think the problem with the backgrounds I want to say about this guy's comic is that they're too perfect and they need more texture. If you take a look at a bathroom or a kitchen wall versus a bedroom wall, the three-dimensional relief of the spackle, it's like you get sheetrock usually and then spackle and then paint over that. The relief is different. I mean, if you rub your hands across it, how rough it is, because in a kitchen, people do things like you drop a can of soda, it explodes all over the freaking walls. It's like you got to be able to wipe that off a kitchen wall. That's why they're smoother than like a living room wall, where unless you're a savage, you're not drinking in a living room. Anyway, the point is like you're gonna have spider webs, or you're gonna paint over like wood surfaces, and sometimes the knot holes will leak acids and oils. You never consciously notice that. These little tiny imperfections in texture, but it's something that registers as too clean on your subconscious. It's wrong to you. Or when things are too geometrical, because houses are built on foundations which are built on clay, and they settle, unfortunately, differential subsidence. I have cracks in my sheetrock now I'm looking at. So yeah, I realized I wanted to start talking about Preacher. I never got around to it. But if you made it to the end of this video, 14 minutes, and you want that Preacher comic book, send me a DM in Discord or email me, and I will send it out to you. All right, like, comment, subscribe, guys. I will see you all next episode.